This was the moment that changed everything in the nutrition and fitness world. What was once known, practiced, the very things that shaped an entire industry that changed almost overnight. Today, I'm gonna tell you about this big shift and what it means for you and your fitness goals, but also for your nutrition clients. Hey there, Dr. Mark here, and I'm a nutrition coach with over 1,000 successful nutrition client transformations. I've been on a lifelong journey to discover the relationship between what you eat and how it changes your body, your exercise, and even your life. Here's my promise to you. Watch until the end of the video and you're gonna get a 20-year recap on the world of nutrition, fitness, and coaching. And you'll be a much better coach because of it. And here's why. For the first little bit of my nutrition coaching career, I was completely self-taught. How everything started for me was I was completely obsessed with the process of getting jacked. I wanted to get leaner, I wanted to gain muscle, and I was going to learn everything I could about that process. What it looked like for me though was listening to everyone around me in the gym and picking up what I could and sort of piecemealing all of that information together. I'd learn a little bit here, I learned a little bit there, and I started creating this elaborate list of rules, which essentially turned into a large game of fitness telephone tag. You know that game you would play growing up where you'd sit in a circle and you would tell a secret to one person and then it would sort of get misconstrued till you got to the next person and then they would retell it? The nutrition world in the gym was the exact same thing. All these people looking to gain muscle, get leaner, would listen to the most jacked person in there. And they would take it as gospel. They would listen to exactly what they did and try to apply it. Sometimes it would work, but most of the time it wouldn't. And a lot of the knowledge that we had originated from these circles. Now keep in mind, there's an entire field of nutrition and dietetics at the academic level, but those worlds were completely disconnected. It was not like it is today, where people study this stuff and apply what they know to their coaching practice. But being self-taught meant I was my own experiment. So I would listen to everyone I could in the gym, apply what they were telling me, as well as read everything I could get my hands on the internet. Websites like T Nation and bodybuilding.com, every time a new article was released, I would be the first one to read it. During this time, I was actually studying organic chemistry at the university level and I didn't really love it. I would spend all of my time in the weight room and even during my lectures, I would be surfing these websites looking for different ways to get jacked. I was essentially consuming knowledge and trying to put it together in a cohesive way. And what it ended up looking like was an elaborate list of food rules. And I wasn't alone in this. Even the smart and the established people in this world, they were doing the same thing. What it meant was setting a timer and needing to eat every 2 to 3 hours, eating very low carb most of the time except around my workouts. You gain fat because of insulin, and since insulin was the storage hormone, when you ate carbohydrates and it spiked your insulin, that's how you gain fat. So you wanted to avoid that at all costs. You also needed to eat within 30 minutes of working out to hit the anabolic window. Now, food choices, that was a completely different story. You needed to eat quote unquote clean. Anything deemed unhealthy was completely forbidden. This meant fast food and all processed food except for protein powder. You could eat as much of that as you wanted. And that's probably because I was getting all my nutrition information from supplement companies. And this is just an abbreviated list. It was much, much longer. I remember you couldn't eat before bed. So as a university student, when people would get pizza after the bar, I wouldn't eat the pizza then. I would save it in the pizza box and actually hide it from my roommates underneath the couch so that I could eat it the next day and I wouldn't gain fat. It was completely insane. This was my way of life. This is what I followed. And that's what the people around me were doing as well. And the more dedicated you were to the process, the more you felt like it was working, even if it wasn't. And although I made some progress, it was a bit slow. And truthfully, from what I would learn later, I was making this progress in spite of what I was doing, not because of it. And that was the absolute hardest thing to understand. I didn't have a system that gave me predictable, consistent results. And it would not only set me back, but it would also prevent me from creating a business where I could coach and help others. Here's where that started to change though. The first time I really started opening my eyes and realizing there was more to this process than I understood was in the gym locker room. In undergrad, I had created a powerlifting team, a competitive powerlifting team. It's like 2007. This was before powerlifting got popular. There's a group of 4 or 5 of us that would train together and compete as a team in some of our local meets. One of my training partners, Alex, who was a fantastic lifter, super jacked and knowledgeable, had just finished a workout and was starting to get into what he was going to eat. I remember clear as day what he pulled out of his gym bag. You remember those little cereal boxes? He had one of those and it was Fruit Loops. And I remember thinking, what are you doing? You're eating this stuff. And he said, well, yeah, I got to get my carbs in. And to me, I was like completely taken aback. I was shocked. How could this super lean and muscular guy eat this type of garbage? Like, doesn't that stuff make you fat? And I remember him saying, no, I don't believe in that stuff. That planted a little seed in my head. And I remember I didn't change much after that point, but I remember thinking there's something to this. Anyways, at that moment, what I didn't realize was that our individual food choices, they don't influence if you gain weight or gain muscle or improve your overall health. It is the sum of all these choices that contribute towards your diet that has that influence over that process. And this is where things started to unravel. They started to unravel for me, but also the people around me too. Also, you gotta keep in mind the things that we were doing weren't wrong, but they weren't right either. And that's what we're gonna talk about today. And I remember the exact moment when it happened, when everything changed. It was 2010 and I came across an article on a brand new website called leangains.com. The article was titled Top 10 Fasting Myths Debunked. The author, Martin Burkhan, was presenting a complete contrarian view to a lot of the things that were known and accepted, especially in the sports nutrition and bodybuilding circles, which was namely, you didn't need to eat breakfast and you didn't need to eat frequently. You need to remember how things looked at this time. This was the height of Tupperware culture. Panicked bodybuilders would be living and dying by their clocks. There'd be a countdown to 3 hours where you needed to eat again. You needed protein, you needed nutrients, or you'd wither away. And breakfast, that was the most important meal of the day, right? You couldn't go without that. He presented scientific evidence around the science of fasting, which essentially debunked the biggest myth in this space, which was eating more frequently would stoke this metabolic fire and allow you to burn more calories. This was one of the most long-standing myths in our space, and the science just didn't support it. If you evenly matched calories and macronutrients in 2 diets, it really didn't matter how you split it up, if it was 3 meals a day, 6 meals a day, or even 1 meal a day. When I first read this stuff, I didn't believe it. I wasn't just skeptical, I actually did not believe it. This flew in the face of everything that I knew, that I thought I knew, that I had learned over time. But this was just classic Dunning-Kruger effect. I was starting to realize I didn't know what I didn't know, and I was committed to trying it out. So I started to do the Lean Gains method, which was 16 hours of fasting and 8-hour eating window, and it completely changed my world. I didn't wither away, I got leaner, and if anything, I actually got muscular. And things were starting to unravel here. The biggest thing being, I started to become a little bit more skeptical of the entire process. And I started to add context to this entire process through the scientific process. When it came to nutrition and what we eat and how it influenced gaining muscle and losing fat, some things were more important and some things were less important. And this isn't a story about fasting, it's a realization that the scientific process is the foundational knowledge of what we know. It influences our results and our systems as coaches. And this was the huge shift in the nutrition and fitness industry. We started seeing authors and coaches creating hierarchies out of these principles. Calories and macronutrients matter more. Meal timing and supplements matter a lot less. Flexible dieting became popular and we could use and control things that would truly give us results. The tide was turning and I personally started to see all the contrarian content all around me. I remember following pro bodybuilder Shelby Starnes. Bodybuilders need to eat a lot of food. Typically, they're not fasting because they need to eat so many calories through so many meals to make gains. But I remember Shelby posting a picture of his off-season diet, and in the morning for about 3 hours, he was only drinking coffee. And I remember this comment, I'll never forget it. In the comments, it was on Instagram, someone said, you don't eat, within 3 hours of waking up. Aren't you afraid of losing all your muscle? And you need to remember, this is a pro bodybuilder. His livelihood is tied to gaining muscle, keeping muscle, and looking a certain way. And I'll never forget how he responded. He said, some things matter a lot more, other things matter a lot less. The emergence of science and evidence-based practice changed nutrition and fitness forever. I continued down this path of being skeptical and questioning things. Because rightfully so, my entire world had been flipped upside down. My entire identity was tied to doing things a certain way. And a lot of it was no longer necessary. For the longest time, fast food, something like McDonald's, would be something that I would not eat. But I started to develop a coaching system where I could control for this stuff, so I started to eat it, albeit very infrequently, but I would eat it. Because when you have control of science, there's no good or bad food, there's just better or worse choices within the context of your goals. And as a nutrition coach, I started to understand and apply there's a million ways that you can lose fat, but only one way that fat loss actually happens. And when you understand how to play around and control for energy, you have control over that entire process. So I started to work the entire scientific process into my own nutrition, but also how I coached others. And in the scientific process, we have a hierarchy of evidence, right? It's actually like this. The hierarchy of evidence for scientific research is an upside down triangle. We have observational stuff and anecdote at the bottom. Then we start to have population-based cohorts where we look at groups of people and what they do. And then we start to test different things against each other with placebo-based controls, and that gives us even better evidence. And then you can randomize things and it's even better. And at the top of this stuff, we put together the evidence for the best controlled studies, and that gives us the best sense of how things actually work, how they occur. It's this type of approach that changed fitness, that changed nutrition coaching. I went to do my PhD in human nutrition because of this process, because I wanted to understand the scientific process and how it would apply to my clients. But you don't need to when you understand the fundamentals. But a lot of people still don't understand this stuff, and that's okay because it hasn't been presented in the right way. As I started to post more and more content on YouTube, I started to see it way more often. A long time ago, I stopped arguing with people on the internet about nutrition and just focused my energy on the people that wanted to hear this message, that accepted it and wanted to learn more. But I still see it all the time in the comments. Do you really think this process doesn't matter at all? Or you could just eat whatever you want? Or you didn't read this so-and-so doctor that says keto is the only way and sugar fuels this? Within the scientific process, we're always building a body of evidence. As new stuff is learned and studied, you add it to this comprehensive base of knowledge. But what a lot of people and coaches will do within their own interests is cherry pick studies and only look at things one way. And to each their own, I'm always going to be a supporter of anyone that wants to use nutrition and fitness to help people, but that's just not how this stuff works. But anyways, the emergence of the scientific process completely transformed my own results and my own coaching, and really helped establish my nutrition coaching practice, where we can set the structure of what someone needs to do within their nutrition based on their requirements and their goals and what is required for them to eat, translate that into calories and macronutrients and control for that stuff, as well as coach them with the right proper habits and how to fill that structure. No more food rules or black or white, just applying the best knowledge of what we know to push progress. This is the process that's worked for me, for my thousands of clients, and the coaches that I now teach. And I'm sure it'll work for you too. So sincerely, I am very appreciative that you followed along with this story today. Now, as great as all those tips are, if you're really serious about starting a nutrition coaching business, the next thing I'll have you do is check out this video I've linked up right here. Today, we learned about the huge shift in the nutrition coaching industry, the emergence of science and the scientific process. We're now going to apply that to assessing different fad diets. We're going to compare the keto diet, the carnivore diet, and the paleo diet to decide which one's best. Check it out right here, and I'll see you in the video.